Welcome back. We have Dr. Joseph Barrera here on behalf of Providence Mission Hospital. Well, welcome. Very nice to have you on.
Thanks for having me, Lisa.
We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to come on in and
Of course.
help inform our residents of, so many different things that are going on right now, and some things I think people aren't always aware of, especially when it comes to our thyroid, and that's what we'll be talking about today.
Right.
So tell me, before we get into that, a little bit about yourself, how long you've been practicing and how you got here.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been an endocrinologist in the community since 2002, and my practice has been in Mission Viejo. And then in the last couple of years, I split my time now between a role as our associate medical director, and because I love taking care of patients, have retained that role as an endocrinologist.
Okay. All right, interesting. Now, what exactly is an endocrinologist?
So we study and take care of patients with hormonal disorders. I would say the majority of what we see are individuals with diabetes. And then the second most common thing that we see is disorders of the thyroid gland.
Okay, and what brings on issues with your thyroid?
Many things. There's a higher likelihood of a thyroid condition happening as people age. And there's also a higher prevalence of endocrine disorders in women. It seems to always be that way, right?
Right.
And so those things together increase the likelihood of an older female having a thyroid disorder.
Now, when you talk about thyroid, endocrinology could also be associated with bones and osteoporosis.
Absolutely, yeah. So hormonal disorders can include menopause, osteoporosis, and many other endocrine glands. Mm-hmm. But by far and away, diabetes and thyroid is the bulk of our practice.
Okay. So what are people experiencing with any type of thyroid condition?
Yeah, it's a great question. I kind of think of it as structural and then functional. So structural meaning something's wrong with the architecture or anatomy of the thyroid gland. It's like a small butterfly-shaped gland that sits in the base of our neck. Mm-hmm. So that's the structural stuff. And then separate are functional problems where the structure of the thyroid's stable and normal, but functionally it's either underproducing or overproducing thyroid hormone.
Okay. And is there testing that you would do? Like, I guess I would never know if my thyroid was working properly unless I had some kind of symptoms or there was a test for it.
Right. So the structural problems often have no symptoms. You might know of a couple of cases. I think Tarek on Flip or Flop, Deborah Norville, also a newscaster. Both of those individuals had viewers basically write to the station and say, I think Deborah has a small structural change with her thyroid, a nodule. And over time, as that got reported to her, they discovered that she in fact had thyroid cancer and was treated for that. So a reviewer reported that. So that can sometimes be seen by a significant other, a relative.
Right.
I'm, as an endocrinologist, always in the habit of looking at people's neck. It must be sort of strange, right? You just think, oh, does that person have a goiter or a nodule? Structural problems are less common. The functional problems are far more common. So nothing's wrong structurally, but with a blood test, you can detect, is the thyroid potentially underproducing or overproducing thyroid hormone? Mm-hmm. And as you were asking, the symptoms are very nonspecific. So for underactive, just think of it as a metabolic situation. If you were making too little thyroid hormone, you could experience weight gain, sluggishness, fatigue, just some general nonspecific symptoms. Mm-hmm. And the exact opposite, if your thyroid is overactive, weight loss, agitation, maybe some heart palpitations.
And so someone that has diabetes, what would their thyroid be doing?
Great question. So they're independent disorders, but many people with diabetes happen to also have thyroid problems and vice versa. Mm-hmm. So you could have diabetes without any problems with your thyroid, and vice versa. You could have a abnormal thyroid function or structure mm-hmm. with no evidence of diabetes. They don't necessarily overlap, but both conditions are frequent enough where we treat many people with both.
So when someone is over the age of 55, which is the majority of our residents, at what point would they be concerned hormonally? Because many women are already past that menopausal stage. Right. So can the thyroid still be affected?
Absolutely. Yeah, the incidence increases with age. It's almost like the thyroid has to work harder as we get older. And there may be a point where, because of that, the thyroid is no longer able to maintain normal thyroid function. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, the test that we'll do to screen people is called a TSH, stands for thyroid stimulating hormone. And pretty much everybody who goes to their doctor for an annual exam should have that. Simple blood test, inexpensive, and a very reliable indicator of whether or not somebody's thyroid function is normal or not.
Yeah, I think it's part of just your general physical exam.
Yeah,
they run
absolutely.
that panel for you, and that's included as that, right?
Yeah, correct.
And what are some of the treatments that people can look forward to?
Yeah, for an underactive thyroid, it's thyroid hormone replacement, synthetic thyroid hormone. There are some non-synthetic replacement hormones that we sometimes prescribe, and it's really essentially replacing what the thyroid could not do any longer. That's for underactive. And then with overactive, a little trickier. Luckily, that's less common, about 5 times less common than hypo or underactive thyroid. And there's medication we can use to alleviate symptoms and then to slow down the thyroid. In some rare cases, we have to do things to essentially eliminate the thyroid, whether it's radioactive iodine or with surgery.
Okay.
But there's readily available treatments for either condition.
Okay. Now, you had written an article for, I believe it was US Week.
Yeah.
And, what are some of the things that you addressed in that article, and everybody is seeing that on the screen now?
Yeah, I was one of the contributors along with some of the other endocrinologists throughout the country. So it really was meant to have people be more alert to what symptoms might be present when they have a thyroid disorder. And because the symptoms are nonspecific, I think if people read through the article, almost everybody would say, well, I have a handful of those symptoms. I think whether you do or not, I think it's important that people ask their physician to screen them for thyroid problems, particularly as we get older, and if there's a family history. So young people can have thyroid problems as well, particularly if there's a family history of thyroid problems within the family. I tell patients, like, one of the most important things is to have accurate family history. Back in the day, people would write that in a Bible or something, say, oh, this is what so-and-so had, this really nice family tree. I think just as important to try to maintain that now so we know what we're at risk for.
Great information, and I think it's good to know what an endocrinologist does, because I think a lot of people don't know all of the things that you cover. So great information. Thank you for being here.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And if you want more information about what we have discussed regarding the thyroid, you can always go to providence.org/mission. And if you would like to read that article, you can type in Dr. Joseph Barrera, US Week, and it'll bring you to that link. We'll be right back.